Not for Broadcast is by Not Games, and when I talked about Day Repeat Day, I said there's a few things that I've enjoyed that talk about how, the system is out to get us or things like that. And there are a couple of films that I'd have loved to have talked about first because this really reminded me of one in particular. But I haven't gotten around to watching them again yet, so I've got to put them on the back burner. I did say I'd space these out. So here we are talking about this, and this was one of those. There's quite a few, if you've been on this channel for a while, that I've said I tried to play once, just couldn't get into it. Tried to play again, didn't quite click. This was a weird one. Because I played the prologue, the first bit, way back when it was first sort of out, and I generally enjoyed it. I was like, this is interesting, and I like how there's something, even in the first tiny little prologue bit, there's elements, the seeds of what would come later. When it came to full release, I played a bit, and remembering my fun time originally, and I just didn't like how hectic it felt. Something just didn't feel right. Maybe I was in a very high stress time when I tried it that time, but I think once more I tried it, and again I think I was soured by the previous time, and I was expecting to have issues, and so I'd set myself up for failure. This time, I was like, okay, surely there's difficulty options. Maybe if I lower it down, not to story, because I still want something to do. I don't want the auto center and everything like that, so I customized it so that I could play it without being too stressed. That was a critical part of it. And I got through the whole thing. I really enjoyed, and I love the interstitial bits. What people know of this game is probably what you can see behind me, the newsroom thing of hitting the right buttons to change cameras, loading up the adverts, making sure the audience share is right, etc. But now it has little story bits in between, and the beauty, after the first prologue bit, you move into the second bit, and nothing would seem to normally match up. However, and this is a rare situation where I'm actually saying that watching supplemental materials to a game or whatever is actually really a good idea. There is a free documentary on Steam where they talk about the fact that they were making this, they were ready to get episode 2 out the door, and they just needed to film it, and all the script was done basically. And then lockdown hit, like COVID hit around the world. One of them was in Australia, which was really good for writing because normal distractions weren't there, so that worked out well. But everyone else was like, we can't film our people. When you're doing an FMV game, you need to be able to film your people. So they created a dream sequence instead. And that's such a great idea because at the end of the previous chunk, your character is electrocuted. So whilst you were recovering, you had this weird fever dream, because you've been working that long now that it's just part of your psyche. Really good way around the problems. And I noticed things were a bit weird. I mean, I was just thought, it's a lockdown thing. They've incorporated it into the story. Fine. But there's moments where people are called the wrong names and don't feel upset, but then they call themselves the wrong names, and there's little things that reference other stuff. But one of the key bits, and I did not realise that it was they've recorded a bunch of different ones based on choices you've made. This was where they brought the story element, the interstitial stuff, and the FMV stuff, like the newsroom stuff, together. I got a song about You Clearly Love Your Daughter More. There's a lot of other things out there depending on choices you've made. There's a video later on where Megan, one of the newsreaders, is talking about her family. She has a brother who is somewhere where, a massive explosion's just happened. That only happens if you've allowed your daughter to go abroad. There's so much here that once the lockdown thing had started to bring the two sides together, because it was something I was struggling with, but once that happened, suddenly everything became a lot easier to tie the stories together. It all worked so well, but this really weird off-the-wall lockdown episode was so helpful in guiding the game further. And I loved so much of this. The one thing that I knew that people might struggle with, emotionally and obviously conceptually, is the on-screen self taking out that one of the characters does. This is an important plot point because the government that has come in at the start of things, the first news thing you ever do, it's there, thanks for electing us speech, and we've got a vision for the future. But over time, things happen, and they might not be doing things that you agree with. You might agree with them. But one of the characters does have that network moment, which is one of the films I do want to talk about. You know, I'm annoyed as heck, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Paraphrased and slightly cleaned up. But that thing is there. He has that thing of, we're meant to be the news, we're meant to be unbiased. I can't deal with being like this. I can't deal with the censorship. And I agree with the sort of anonymous stand-in, I guess, of Disrupt. And like I say, he does something very, very final, very violent. And it does have a profound effect on many of the characters moving forward. What I think has helped some of the performances in later pieces is the fact that COVID safety on sets is a thing. So I don't think before they had massive amounts of crew in the room, but they really had to limit to who is needed in the room, and can people be outside of the room, like the directors and stuff. I mean, for the directors and creators of the games, it did make sense to be watching on a screen, because they wanted to see what it was like. So they'd have 4 screens with all the different camera angles, so they could see what it would like to the player when it came around to the actual game part. Makes a lot of sense. But it's a lot easier to have a closed set for a good emotional performance. And yeah, it really, really worked for this. The emotional performances they got me in a lot of cases. And like the ending, I got a very, very dramatic kind of ending, but unfortunately, this is one of those games that doesn't just say, yeah, you did the right choice, well done, you've followed this path through, you know, you've fought for freedom, or whatever it may be. There are moments throughout where I'm learning things about these people who created this political party to try and make their country better. They had a life that gave them difficulties, and they didn't want that for people. So what sometimes people do in this situation is think, well, if we were all equal, if we redistributed everything perfectly evenly, surely no one would suffer then. But then you start to think, well, maybe, you know, old people, they're a strain on resources, so if we allow them to exit on their own terms, shall we say, then surely that's not a drain. And what about people with long-term health conditions? Maybe allowing them to do that. And it comes from a place of, dare I say, love and caring. But what actually happens is a very sort of totalitarian controlling regime. And it does tend to be, it's quite scary. There's sections in the game where young people are coming forward going, oh, you're only like that because you existed before. Like, can't you see this is right? I sided with the rebels. I sided with taking this thing down, but I still had moments of doubt throughout. And then at the end realised that, in fact, this anonymous stand-in Disrupt were being orchestrated by other parties, so that a military dictatorship could be installed instead. I enabled that. I made that happen. I felt super bad about all that. But that's what this is good for. That's why I wanted to talk about this game. It is a very interesting tale. And yeah, there's great moments of humour. Even after it's got dark, there's moments that will make you laugh out loud. But all throughout there's this growing sense of dread, or whatever it may be. I mean, I don't know, if you go along the party line, I've always said one playthrough, one story, that's my run. There are multiple endings. I'm not getting them all. No chance. But I don't know if you go the advanced route, if you go and support this political party all throughout, everything they've done, do you get a happy ending? Because it's like, actually, yeah, society's better off like this. I don't know. Anyone who's played it, please tell me what route you took. Please tell me all the options that you made, and whether that gave you a more fulfilling or rewarding outcome. Whether you didn't realise there were so many outcomes like I did, although you do see a thing at the end and there's a lot of space. But yeah, tell me your outcomes. Tell me what happened to you and whether you felt that was right given the choices you made. I will say I felt cheated, but by the characters who were running Disrupt. I didn't feel cheated by the game. The outcome made sense. I just felt like I'd been used. And that's a good sign. These people know how to write a good story and make a good game of this. They got me invested. They made me care about these people. And I can't ask for more. There are many things I've played and enjoyed that don't leave me coming away with this feeling. And yeah, this is definitely my top list of games. I think it's well worth a play. Even though I've told you like some of the story beats and things, I don't think it's ruining it. Go and enjoy it yourself. Seriously, do it now. And yeah, like I said, let me know how you messed up the world or not. And yeah, until next time, as always, thank you for watching, take care, and this has been your National Nightly News.